All right, let's move on to chapter 5, Renounce and Rejoice. I hope you don't mind the light situation. I make these Bhagavad Gita videos right after my reading in the morning, just so that I can make it really fresh. So my office windows, they face east. So if I make videos early in the morning, the sun hasn't gone above my window level yet, so you can still see the sunlight, which I really enjoy in the morning, but definitely it's not the best for making videos. So I hope you don't enjoy. With the Bhagavad Gita course, I didn't want to make it too like, have the perfect lighting and camera and all that stuff. I just wanted it to be completely raw and just all about the actual teaching itself. And I thought, what better way to make it really valuable and true to the teaching than just to focus on just doing this style of video where I just speak to you like you're here in my room with me. And I also thought I would do it in the morning because like that's when I'm the most fresh. Throughout the day as I answer posts, as I maybe make some YouTube videos and things like that and have conversations, the mental freshness leaves you more and more. But I wanted to do justice to this course. So, yeah. So I hope you're not going, through this course too fast. I would definitely recommend just like the other main course that we have, the 10-week one, maybe go through like a day by day rather than going through too many videos too fast because like what's the point, Your mind may want to go through all of it so fast, but it's like it won't serve it. You won't remember anything or you won't really retain anything. This isn't meant to be gone through just like all in one day or 2 days. So my advice is like read a chapter a day with me, one chapter a day, and then you watch the video, and then let the teaching just dwell on the teaching that day. Try to bring those things into your practice. Okay. So one thing I will start doing in these videos one now, and I'm sorry it took me 5 chapters to realize I should be doing this, but when I read out of the book, I'm going to start mentioning the verse that I'm reading. So if you do have the same version of the book as me, you should be able to read along. All right, renounce and rejoice. This chapter is all about Karma Yoga, path of selfless service, selfless action. Okay, so Krishna, in the beginning of the chapter, in verse 2, tells Arjuna both renunciation of action and the selfless performance of action lead to the supreme goal, but the path of action is better than renunciation. So, you've heard of sages like Ramana Maharshi who renounced everything altogether. And it wasn't even like through self will, it was just through a power unknown to them. You may have also heard Eckhart Tolle's story where, like, for a few years, he was just completely disoriented based on the discovery he had. And it was just like the renouncing of all doing for a few years. I think he was just sitting on a park bench. So you may have heard a few teachers who, like, and sages of the past that, like, had fully renounced all action. But Krishna says here to Arjuna, and then, he's also sensing Arjuna's temperament. Arjuna is like the average person. Arjuna is like the average spiritual seeker. For him, the path of renunciation of all action is not relevant. Krishna knows that. And so also he's telling Arjuna that the path of renunciation is not necessarily better. The path of action is better, he says. And I've noticed this for myself too. Like, when I started to really get into self inquiry, I had a sense that like I wanted to sort of leave everything behind and I wanted to just focus on meditation. And it's like, it's funny because when we're early in this and we have those, it's like an immaturity that we have, a spiritual immaturity that we feel like, hey, the more I renounce action or things, like the more spiritual I'll become. But that's what I failed to understand back in the day. It's like even if I was to do that, if I was to let go of some sort of action, work, or renounce some material things, because of my immaturity and lack of understanding, I would unknowingly renounce all those things with an expectation, an attachment, a selfish attachment that it must bring me more spiritual progress or growth. So these things we unknowingly do out of our immaturity, out of our ignorance. And I did that, as I've shared with you on many, many meetings before, that like I remember for a few months, I really thought that, hey, if I just simplify my life and I do the least bit possible, because, before that, before I really became super passionate about this teaching, I was all about self betterment, self help, working super hard, like 13-hour days, and just 6 days a week. So I came from like that self betterment and manifestation worldview where it's all about like, you know, trying to create the life you want to live and working really hard towards it. So when I came to across the spiritual teachings and like in self inquiry in specific, I was like, let me get rid of most of my activity, the most that I possibly can. And so what I did is like I created a super simple life where I was barely doing anything. I even reduced the amount of videos that I would release a week. I reduced my workload with the program, so many things. Like I just did bare minimal. But I found that like for those few months, that didn't really help either. It's not the answer. It's not that those few months where I had barely anything to do that it made my spiritual practice any better. And I found actually quite the opposite, that when I renounced all that action, my mind would start creating complications out of the littlest of things. When the mind is no longer, like focused on big things and like, the day to day life. And if you just like renounce that, but you're still like, you're not doing that out of spiritual maturity, you're doing it out of immaturity and ignorance. Like, oh, I want to let things go. And so what you'll find is that the mind will start sinking its teeth into things that do not matter at all and creating complications out of the smallest of things. And so when I noticed this, then like, it helped me really learn that lesson. So all those few months where I experimented renouncing all action, it wasn't ultimately a waste. It helped me to come to that realization that, hey, this is also not the way. I have to actually bring spirituality into the work of my life. I have to bring all of these spiritual teachings and values. I have to live the spiritual, saintly life in the midst of all the action. So, I have people ask me all the time, some in the program, some, just on YouTube, like, oh, I live a hectic life. I have a busy life. I do this and that. I have children. How do I possibly practice meditation, or how do I practice spirituality? They think their hectic life is an obstacle to their spirituality, their spiritual path. Whereas I keep on emphasizing to them that your spiritual, your personal life, your hectic life is your path. Anybody, if you try, you can find time to meditate. It's just it's our lack of devotion that doesn't allow us to find time to meditate. It's not the hecticness of our life. Ultimately, anything we prioritize, we will find time for. That's why in the beginning of the book, Krishna says, create a singleness of purpose, single mindedness of purpose. If this is the highest thing in life for you, you will find time. You will find a way. There's no like exception around that. And you may, yeah, of course, like it is hard to practice the being aware, being present, and living in this way in daily life. But that's why, you have programs like this, you have books guiding you, you have videos guiding you. But the problem is people just want to watch these videos, but they don't want to practice. They don't want to practice when things get real. It's easy to contemplate these subjects and watch these videos when life is going well and everything's smooth. But when things actually require the practice, when your mental impressions are arising and you feel bondage and limitation, people don't want to practice. And they say that the problem is their hecticness of their life, their work, their children. Those aren't obstacles. It's just your devotion is lacking. That's the very path. Your children are the path to your self-realization. Your work is the path to your self-realization. Mature up, grow up. That's spiritual growing up. So those are the realizations we have to have. We all have to come to those realizations. So create that single-mindedness of purpose. See self-realization, your union with Krishna, your understand your realization of your true self as your highest purpose in this life. From it, you will get all the energy you need to practice, even in the hecticness of life. Okay. So verse 3. Those who have attained perfect renunciation are free from any sense of duality. They are unaffected by likes or dislikes. Once again, this theme, a perfect evenness of mind, going beyond attachment and aversion, likes and dislikes. They belong to the ego, not to you. So they are unaffected by likes and dislikes, Arjuna, and are free from the bondage of self will. So look how um, Krishna actually says the self will is bondage. Self will, which is like our motivity and us feeling like I am the doer, because with it comes an attachment to action. I mean, attachment to the results of our action, right? From self will flows all selfish attachment. So he says that the wise who have attained perfect renunciation are free from the bondage of self will. And you may say, oh, but I haven't attained perfect renunciation, so I still, have that bondage. That's what Krishna is giving an example to us for. He is giving us an example to strive towards. He is giving us the perfect picture. And then we simply have to strive as much as we can to become like that perfect picture. What we have to perfect is not our self, because Krishna will soon talk about how the self is already beyond all these notions, but we have to perfect our thought, motive, speech, action. Thought, speech, and action are the path of purification. Purification of what? The mind. What are you purifying? Ignorance. The immature think that knowledge and action are different, but the wise see them as the same. The person who is established in one path will attain the rewards of both. The goal of knowledge and the goal of service are the same. Those who fail to see this are blind. So the path of knowledge, like the self-inquiry teachings and understanding your true self, like the non-dual teachings, non-duality teachings, and the path of action, like the goal of both are the same. So, non-dualist may say, oh, the path of action and the path of devotion, those are lesser paths, and I am more evolved, and I am, I am wiser, a fool. He says, he, Krishna says, those who fail to see that both the goal of both is the same are blind. So, that's why I love the Bhagavad Gita. It really helped me combine the path of action and really taught me how to live in this world for the sake of truth. It helped me combine that path with the path of knowledge and meditation, which resonated most deeply with me. It's still to this day, self inquiry is something that I feel like drives my entire practice. It is the foundation for my practice. But without the practical teachings of how to live day to day life devoted to the truth of the Bhagavad Gita, I feel like I would lack that holistic well roundedness that is required to really excel. Otherwise, things become an obstacle and we feel limited. Sometimes you hit a barrier in the path of knowledge, and the path of action will break it for you. Sometimes you hit a barrier in the path of action, and the path and knowledge will break it for you. So, seeing it that way, it's really nice. So, verse 6, perfect renunciation is difficult to attain without performing action. But the wise, following the path of selfless service, quickly reach Brahman. So you see, perfect renunciation is difficult to attain without performing action. Years ago, when I tried to renounce action, I was immature and like I still couldn't attain renunciation by renouncing, even because I had it through my own ignorance. I was attached to what that renunciation must bring me. And I was waiting for more spiritual progress coming around the corner, you know? So when the immature renounce action, unknowingly to them, they are still renouncing action with an attachment. So it's not actually renouncing anything. As you know, it's not about what you renounce on this path, it's about the mental attachment that you have to getting something from it. Real renunciation of is of expectation, of any selfish attachment or desire, any motive, because motive is what it's ego. It's not an activity of the ego. Motivity is itself egoic, ego in nature, ego in action. So he says, the wise follow the path of selfless service and they quickly reach Brahman. And they, in verse 7, those who follow the path of service, they have who have completely purified themselves and conquered their senses and self will. So they're conquered their self will, see the self in all creatures, and are untouched by any action they perform. So they become like the self, untouched by the activities of nature, of the three gun, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So, verse 8, those who know this truth, whose consciousness is unified, think always, I am not the doer. While seeing or hearing, touching or smelling, eating, moving about, or sleeping, breathing, or speaking, letting go or holding on, even opening or closing their eyes, they understand that these are only the movements of sense objects among, sorry, the movements of senses among sense objects. This was very eye opening for me. And this goes straight in line with the teaching of the Buddha, where he says, observe experience. You know, all experience is transient, all experience is suffering, and there's no self in experience. So the body doing is not the self. The mind thinking of what to do is not the self. Here, Krishna says, right? The wise understand that all action, everything on the material realm, is just the senses moving about in the world of sense objects. Of course, it's the appearance that I am this body doing, but he said the wise understand that I am not the doer. They have transcended personal identity, body identification. They see this entire world of form as just the workings of nature, just the interaction of the three gun of sattva, rajas, and tamas. And no action touches them. Just like the present moment, no matter how much experience comes and goes in it, no action, no experience actually touches it, affects it, changes it in any way, shape, or form. Verse 10, those who surrender to Brahman all selfish attachments are like the leaf of a lotus floating clean and dry in the water. Sin cannot touch them. So basically, just what we talked about. Renouncing their selfish attachments, those who follow the path of service, work with body, senses, and mind for the sake of self-purification. So you see right here, renouncing all selfish attachments, right? Like the goal of all of our action, the goal of our entire life work is self-purification. Of course, on the level of appearance and personal life, the goal of action will have apparent goals like personally for you. Oh, like where is my work leading to, and getting me personally. but those are all more superficial. The greater um, goal of your action is self realization. So, action is the path of purification. Your hectic life is not an obstacle. Your hectic life is the very means through which you need to purify yourself through selfless action. Renounce selfish attachment. So in verses 12 and 13, he says, those whose consciousness is unified abandon all attachments to the results of action and attain supreme peace. They live content in material reality. So, this was a big discovery for me too. Like, this is where I started to, because also, I've read this so many times. And every time I read it, like, of course, I applied it. And through the past few years, as I've matured, I've clearly come to see more and more that, like, peace does not lie in achievement. That is a false assumption based in arrogance, rooted in arrogance and ignorance. Peace does not lie in achievement. Happiness does not lie in achievement. It lies in renouncing attachment to achievement, attachment to any um, selfish desire. The more we are free from expectation of where our life must go and what it must become and what we must get on the material realm, the more content we actually find ourselves to be. For many years, you may struggle with this. Don't expect that, like, oh, just because you've heard this in a powerful way or read this now and even practiced it a little bit, like, you will not struggle with this. I still struggle with this to this day. Sometimes I do find myself lost in attachment and desiring this and that. And, like, this is why this book has to be read again and again throughout life, because it serves as a constant reminder. God is reminding us again and again because we habitually get lost in our tendencies. And so we have to hear this again and again, apply it again and again until it becomes part of our nature and it becomes more and more deeply understood. So don't think, like, sometimes, we ask questions that, like, oh, I've started to practice this, but this isn't being understood fully, or I haven't fully experienced this yet. Hey, the struggle is the way. Sometimes it takes many months and many years for you to actually come to some realization and a feeling of balance. Like, working without selfish attachment will really ultimately take many months or years of balancing. Like, you will keep finding yourself lost in selfish attachment, and you will, like, want to come over to the side of selfless action, and you're struggling. I don't know how to do that. It's okay. Go through that struggle. Don't think that you're doing anything wrong or that it should just fall in place right away. Go through that struggle. Appreciate it. Embrace it. Strive towards that balance. Strive towards letting go. Little by little, more and more spiritual awareness and knowledge is bestowed onto you. The more you desire to practice these teachings, the more strength to practice them is bestowed up onto you. But most people don't care enough. You understand that? Like, most people do not care enough to really want this. Most people just want sensual pleasure. And so that's what they get: sensual pleasure and pain. Singleness of purpose. Without it, none of it can come to you. There's no secret to spiritual growth. Desire it more than you desire everything else. And God's grace will start to naturally bestow this wisdom onto you. We don't do this. We just have to, like, become willing and open to it. And only then is it bestowed onto us. I wish I could create spiritual progress, but I can't. You can't. We are helpless in doing so. That's the work of grace. So in verse 14 and 15, neither the sense of acting nor actions, nor the connection of cause and effect comes from the Lord of this world. These three arise from nature. The Lord does not partake in the good and evil deeds of any person. Judgment is clouded when wisdom is obscured by ignorance, but ignorance is destroyed by the knowledge of the self within. So he says that everything on the material and mental plane is the workings of nature. is the workings of the three gun, sattva, tamas, and rajas. So, we feel like, we've had many talks in the school before as well. It's like ultimately everything that happens is God's will. Yes, in a way, everything is God's will. But he's saying in this example, what he's saying is that the Lord is like that non-attached, uninvested, free of motive field in which just the gun are interacting with each other. So when the tamas gun is dominant in a personal expression, then that person engages in harmful deeds, right? And that is also the spiritual evolution of that particular person. When the rajas gun is active and dominant, then the person engages in like restless deeds and constantly striving towards achievement and material pleasure. When the sattva gun becomes dominant, you start watching videos like this, and there's a greater harmony, a sense of peacefulness, balance. So those are all the workings of the gun. They are not what you are, and they do not touch your real self. In a certain way, the Lord does not partake in them at all. They are simply the workings of nature, which are his like which are the Lord's, call it his body, the entire workings of nature, not just materially. Even mind is included in the workings of nature. So, still verse 15 towards the end, those who cast off sin through this knowledge, absorbed in the Lord and established in him as their one goal and refuge, are not reborn as separate creatures. So we do not take shape in the form of the gun, in the form of, in nature, in manifestation. I look at it as like a river flowing, karma and the evolution of a soul being like a bundle of mental impressions. I am this, I am that, enlivened by the spark of consciousness of the divine. I feel like that, to me, based on my current understanding, that's what the soul is. It's like a bundle, a package of mental impressions, with, of course, where there's mind and matter, there's going to be consciousness, right? Consciousness is that divine spark which brings it into manifestation. So I feel like, from my current understanding, and I don't know how accurate that is, I can't guarantee anything, but that is like what the soul feels like. And for me, it's like a river constantly flowing. So the river, the soul, which cleanses and purifies its karma, that river just starts to, right, find its way into the ocean. It has less and less bondage, less and less obstacles to the ocean, and then eventually just empties itself out in the ocean, right? So here he says, when self knowledge is our main goal, right? We are not. Uh, we become established in that, and we are not reborn as separate creatures. So that's like that river, which is ultimately the same essence as the ocean. It finally empties out in the ocean. Whereas the soul, which continues to collect karma through selfish action, continues to be, right, continues to try to find its way to the ocean. Self purification is the emptying of all karma, of all mental impressions, which continue to create an apparent divide between what I am and the source of myself. These are all conceptual things. And, I'm not even good at talking about these types of conceptual things. Ultimately, they won't help you with practice. So it's not that important to think about these things. So here I wrote a note that the Lord is your only goal and refuge. Only goal and refuge. Your only refuge from the suffering of this world, and your only goal is the self. And in verse 18, Krishna says, those who possess this wisdom have equal regard for all. They see the same self in a spiritual aspirant or an outcast, in an elephant, cow, right? All creatures. Such people have mastered life. Verse 20. They are not elated by good fortune, nor depressed by bad. With mind established in Brahman, they are free from delusion, not dependent on any external support. They realize the joy of spiritual awareness. You see, like this comes into the same instruction that he gave in the previous chapter. Once again, evenness of mind. Don't ride the dualities of life. Transcend them. Go beyond likes and dislikes, reaction. Go beyond attachment and aversion. Be the same in good fortune and bad. Be the same in, you know, success and failure, pain and pleasure. This is the model that we have to strive towards, not dependent on any external support. When we cleanse ourselves through this type of instruction and we follow this instruction, we are bestowed greater and greater spiritual awareness, greater and greater joy, peace, happiness, knowledge. Verse 22. Pleasures conceived in the world of the senses have a beginning and an end, and give birth to misery. Arjuna, the wise do not look for happiness in them. Great reminder. There's no happiness in the world of misery. As the Buddha said, ex- observe experience. It is misery. Everybody suffers, and everybody is looking for happiness in the world, but the world cannot satisfy that condition. It can never make you happy. It can never bring you peace. The wise do not look for happiness in the pleasures conceived of the world of senses. The wise find their joy, their rest, and their light completely within themselves. United with the Lord, they attain nirvana in Brahman. Verse 25. Healed of their sins and conflicts, working for the good of all beings, the holy sages attain nirvana in Brahman. Freed from free from anger and selfish desire, unified in the mind, those who follow the path of yoga and realize the self are established forever in that supreme state. And verse 27. Closing their eyes, steadying their breathing, and focusing their attention on the center of spiritual consciousness, the wise master their senses, mind, and intellect through meditation. Self realization is their only goal. Freed from all selfish desire, fear, and anger, they live in freedom always. Focusing their attention on the center of spiritual consciousness, the wise master their senses, mind, and intellect through meditation. Notice the main meditation we cover here, focusing our attention on the center of spiritual consciousness, which is I. I am. So that is the way to master your senses, mind, and intellect. That is also the way of purification. Freed from selfish desire, fear, and anger, they live in freedom always. So selfish desire, fear, and anger is bondage. Freedom from them leads to spiritual knowledge. How many times will we hear that in the Gita? But how many times will we continue to persist that, hey, no, these things are important and these things, we derive a sense of identity from? Great. So let's cover the summary real quick and then we'll wrap it up. Today was a little long one. I was feeling a little chatty. Okay. So, the goal of all action is self purification. By acting without selfish attachment to results, the mind is purified of its delusions. Remember that. The goal of all action is self purification. Make the Lord your only goal in this life. Nothing else actually matters. Things only have superficial importance. apparent importance. Your goals and desires for what you want out of life only has superficial, apparent, surface level importance. Ultimately, make the Lord your only real goal. Also, make the Lord your only refuge in this life. You cannot find security, stability, safety in anything else other than the Lord within yourself. Nothing else can save you. Pleasures conceived in the world of the senses have a beginning and an end and give birth to misery. The wise do not look for happiness in them. This sentence packs a punch. Don't look for, don't ask the world what it cannot give you. Work for the good of all beings, free from anger and selfish desire. Through this, we become like our creator and attain union with him. So this is about seeing as the self sees, being as the self is. That's the path. By surrendering all selfish attachments, you will come to no spiritual harm. Attached to selfish desires, you will never find fulfillment. Continue the workings of this very statement in your life and grow through it. And peace is found in renunciation, not achievement. Very big lesson for me. Have equal regard for all. Well, also, actually, before we move on to the next point, is like with this point itself, notice how we are all just focused in achievement. Whereas when we start to actually focus on renouncing attachment to achievement, then we're really free to live our dharma. We're free to live our unique place in this life, in this moment in time and space, rather than constantly being attached to an idea of what my life should be right now and where it should go. We're able to actually live our dharma. And that is the path of our greatest happiness and spiritual fulfillment. So I just wanted to add that. Have equal regard for all people and beings. See the Lord in them and never bring them to harm. Use that code of conduct as you move about during the day with even the people that you don't like. You are not the doer of any action. All actions are the movements of the senses among sense objects. It is just the workings of nature. So let all of it happen and continue to observe that it sort of has like an independence of its own, works on its own. And in regards to the previous point of having equal regard for all people and things, um, see the Lord as also the self of the people that you don't like or who feel like you are troubled by. They are they are like teachers. They are your guru. You know, you're not only learning from these videos and me and other people, you're learning from those your very own enemies and problems and obstacles. They are also God who has taken shape and form to bring you out of this dream. All right. So that's it for chapter 5, a jam packed one and a very, very, very impactful one, revealing one. I hope this chapter and this video clarified the path of Karma Yoga for you a little bit. And yeah, know that you may have to come back to this again and again and read this chapter many times to really start to grasp the essence of it. Strive to implement it, and you'll be okay. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.